The shuttle docked with a soft thump, and Private First Class stepped onto the Vigilance of Stars for the first time. He was not alone. Beside him, connected by a simple leather lead, walked a German shepherd named Kaiser. The dog was large, almost 95 pounds of muscle and fur, with dark eyes that watched everything and missed nothing. The alien crew members stopped what they were doing and stared. Had expected this. Humans were new to the Galactic Coalition. They had only made contact with other species 8 years ago, and most aliens still did not know what to make of them. Humans were soft. They had no claws, no armor plates, no venom. They healed slowly. They needed to eat and sleep far more than most species. By galactic standards, they were fragile. And this particular human had brought an animal onto a warship. A crew member, covered in bright feathers that shifted colors with its emotions, walked closer. It tilted its head and looked at Kaiser with open confusion. The dog's tail began to wag. "What is this creature?" they asked. "This is Kaiser," said. "He's my dog." "Dog," they repeated as if testing the word. "What function does it serve?" Thought about this for a moment. He could have explained that Kaiser was trained in detection, tracking, and protection. He could have listed the dog's certifications and skills. Instead, he simply smiled. "He's a good boy." Thus feathers flickered with confusion. It stepped back and walked away, clearly deciding that humans were even stranger than the reports had suggested. A security officer approached and led through the ship's corridors. The Vigilance of Stars was massive, home to over 3,000 crew members from dozens of different species. The walls were smooth metal, the lights were cold and blue, and the air smelled like recycled nothing. Kaiser's claws clicked against the floor as they walked, and his nose worked constantly, taking in the thousand strange smells of an alien vessel. They reached a briefing room where met his new squad. Commander was a species that stood nearly 7 feet tall. They had 4 arms, compound eyes, and mandibles that clicked when they spoke. Looked at the way someone might look at a stain on their uniform. "You are the human," said. It was not a question. "Yes, Commander." "And this," compound eyes turned to Kaiser, "this is an animal." "Yes, Commander, he's a military working dog. He's trained in." "I did not ask for his training records." His mandibles clicked sharply. "I asked what an animal is doing on my squad." Kept his voice steady. "Kaiser is part of my unit, Commander. Human military doctrine includes canine support. He saved lives before. He'll save lives here." Stared at him for a long moment. Then the commander turned away, dismissing both human and dog with a wave of one chitinous arm. "We shall see." The rest of the squad was no more welcoming. There was a whose body was made of living crystal that chimed softly when they moved. There was a with 6 limbs and compound eyes similar to's, though smaller and less intimidating. And there was the who had questioned in the docking bay, whose feathers now showed shades of gray that guessed meant doubt or disapproval. None of them knew what to do with a human. None of them knew what to do with a dog. Kaiser did not seem to care. He lay at its feet during the briefing, occasionally lifting his head to sniff the air, his tail thumping against the floor whenever reached down to pet him. To the dog, this was just another place, another mission. What mattered was that his human was here. Everything else was detail. The squad spent the next several days in training exercises, did his best to prove himself useful. He was accurate with his rifle. He followed orders. He kept up with the physical demands, even though his squad members could move faster and take more damage. He was not the best soldier on the team. He knew that. But he was not the worst either. Kaiser, meanwhile, made the aliens nervous. The dog's forward-facing eyes tracked movement in a way that reminded prey species of their nightmares. His teeth, visible when he panted, were clearly designed for killing. And there was something about the way he watched everything, alert and patient, that made even the predator species uncomfortable. "It's like he's hunting us," said one day, watching Kaiser from across the training room. "Even when he's just lying there, like he's waiting." "He's not hunting you," said. "He's just paying attention." "To what?" "Everything. That's what dogs do." Made a sound that might have been disbelief. "Everything." "Everything." The moment came during a routine drill. The squad was practicing breach and clear procedures in a simulated environment, moving through fake corridors and checking fake rooms. It was boring work, the kind of training that soldiers did 100 times until it became automatic. Kaiser stopped. Felt the change immediately. The dog went rigid, his ears forward, his nose pointed toward a wall. A low growl built in his chest, so quiet that only could hear it at first. "Kaiser, what is it, boy?" The growl grew louder. Kaiser's hackles rose, the fur along his spine standing up like a warning. "What is wrong with your animal?" demanded. "I don't know, he's alerting on something." Looked at the wall. It was solid metal, no doors, no windows. "There's nothing on the sensors." Checked their equipment. "Nothing, the wall is solid, there is no one there." Kaiser growled again, teeth bared now, his whole body trembling with tension. "Control your beast," ordered. Shook his head slowly. "Commander, in my experience, when Kaiser says something's wrong, something's wrong." His mandibles clicked with irritation. "There is nothing there. Continue the drill." They continued the drill. Kaiser would not calm down. He kept looking at that wall, kept growling, kept trying to tell them something that none of them understood. 3 hours later, ship security found the saboteur. He was a spy, hidden in a maintenance shaft behind that exact wall, carrying enough explosives to destroy the engine room. The ship's sensors had been fooled by his cloaking technology. The security sweeps had missed him completely. Kaiser had known. Commander found in his quarters that evening. The commander stood in the doorway for a long moment, watching Kaiser sleep on a mat besides bed. "How did it know?" asked. Shrugged. "I don't know exactly. Smell, probably. Maybe something in how the air moved. Dogs notice things we don't. They've been doing it for thousands of years." Was silent. Then slowly the commander nodded. "Perhaps," said, "you are not entirely useless after all." They left without another word. Looked down at Kaiser, who had opened one eye to watch the commander go. The dog's tail thumped once against the mat. "Good boy," said softly. "Good boy." The jungle moon had no name, only a number in coalition records. It was supposed to be empty. It was supposed to be safe. The squad's mission was simple: land, survey the ancient ruins, report back and leave. A standard reconnaissance operation that should have taken 6 hours. The intelligence was wrong. Knew something was wrong the moment they stepped off the shuttle. The jungle was too quiet. The plants were too still. And Kaiser, walking beside him without a lead, had his nose in the air and his body tense. "Something's out there," said quietly. Commander made a dismissive sound. "Our sensors show nothing. The ruins are 2 kilometers north. We move." They moved. The jungle closed around them like a green fist. Massive trees blocked out the sky. Vines hung down like fingers waiting to grab. The air was thick and wet and smelled like rotting plants. Every step took effort. Every breath felt heavy. Kaiser walked in perfect silence. His paws found the quiet places on the ground. His eyes never stopped moving. He looked like what he was, a predator in his element. The ruins appeared through the trees. Ancient stone buildings covered in moss and vines, half swallowed by the jungle. Whatever species had built them was long gone, vanished into history like so many others. "Spread out," ordered. "Search pattern Delta, report anything unusual." The squad moved into the ruins, stayed close to the, whose crystalline body caught the dim light and scattered it in tiny rainbows. Kaiser ranged ahead, nose to the ground, reading a story in the sense that no one else could understand. Then he stopped. The growl that came from his throat was different from the one on the ship. That one had been a warning, controlled and careful. This one was pure threat. This one said, "Danger is here, danger is close, and I am ready to kill it." "Contact!" shouted, but he was too late. They dropped from the trees like nightmares. They were reptilian, covered in scales that shifted colors to match the jungle. They had too many teeth and claws that looked like curved knives. They moved fast, faster than anything that size should move, and they attacked in perfect silence. Went down first. A hit from behind, claws raking across their crystalline body and leaving deep cracks. Screamed, a sound like breaking glass, and collapsed. Tried to fight. The six-limbed soldier grabbed the nearest and threw it into a tree. But two more took its place, and then three more, and suddenly was buried under a pile of hissing, clawing bodies. His feathers flared bright red with fear. They fired wildly into the trees, hitting nothing, screaming something in a language didn't understand. His voice came over the comm, somehow still calm. "All units fall back to the temple structure. Reinforcements requested. ETA 20 cycles. 20 cycles, did the math in his head. That was almost half an hour. They would be dead in 5 minutes. He made a decision. "Kaiser," he said, and his voice was steady even though his heart was pounding. "Fast." The German shepherd exploded into motion. There was no other word for it. Kaiser went from standing still to full sprint in less than a second, a blur of brown and black fur that hit the nearest like a missile. His jaws closed on the creature's throat and he shook once, twice, and the went limp. Kaiser didn't stop. He was already moving to the next target, then the next. He didn't bark. He didn't growl. He killed in perfect silence, the way his ancestors had killed for millions of years before humans ever existed. They didn't understand what was happening. They were predators. They were used to being the most dangerous things in any jungle. They had fought soldiers and killed them. They had fought machines and destroyed them. But they had never fought anything like this. Kaiser moved between them like smoke. He was too fast to hit, too smart to trap. He went for legs, for throats, for the soft places that every predator knew were weak. He wasn't fighting like a soldier. He was fighting like a wolf, like something ancient and primal that had never learned the difference between war and hunting. Advanced behind his dog, rifle up, picking off that Kaiser had wounded but not killed. The two of them worked together without speaking, without signals, reading each other through some connection that had nothing to do with training and everything to do with 10,000 years of shared evolution. Was hurt but alive, dragged toward the temple while Kaiser held the line, had fought free of their attackers and was carrying, who had been hit by a claw and was bleeding from a long gash across their side. Was the last to reach the temple. The commander's carapace was cracked in 2 places, leaking pale fluid, but they were still fighting, still giving orders, still refusing to fall. "Inside," commanded, "defensive positions." They made it inside. They barricaded the entrance. And Kaiser stood in front of the barricade, bloody fur matted to his body, teeth bared, watching the jungle for any sign of movement. They did not attack again. Later would learn that Kaiser had killed 9 of them by himself. 9 raiders, each one a trained killer, each one capable of taking down a coalition soldier in single combat. The dog had torn through them like they were nothing. When the reinforcements finally arrived, they found the squad battered but alive, would need weeks in a healing tank, had lost the use of one arm, would carry a scar for the rest of their life, even would need extensive repairs to their carapace. But they were alive. Sat outside the temple checking Kaiser for injuries. The dog had a few cuts, nothing serious, nothing that wouldn't heal. His tail was wagging again, slow and happy, as if the battle had been just another game. The squad gathered around them. No one spoke for a long moment. Then Kaiser picked up a severed limb, carried it over to and dropped it at his feet. His tail wagged harder. His eyes were bright and proud. laughed, a sound that was half relief and half something he couldn't name. He scratched behind Kaiser's ears, right in that spot that always made the dog's back leg kick. "Good boy," he said, "good boy." Watched this with all six of their eyes. Their voice was quiet when they spoke. "What are humans?" they asked. "What kind of species brings a creature like that to war and calls it a pet?" Looked up at them. He thought about trying to explain. He thought about talking about wolves and caves and 10,000 years of sleeping beside each other, protecting each other, becoming something new together. In the end, he just smiled. "We're pack animals," he said. "That's all. We're pack animals and we take care of our own." Kaiser's tail kept wagging. The jungle was quiet, and somewhere in the distance the shuttle was coming to take them home. The news spread through the ship like fire. Every soldier on the Vigilance of Stars watched the combat footage from the jungle moon. They watched it once, then again, then again. They watched the human's pet turn into a killing machine. They watched it tear through 9 raiders in less than 4 minutes. They watched it stand guard over wounded soldiers while covered in enemy blood. And they watched it wag its tail when its human scratched its ears. Was summoned to appear before the ship's command council 3 days after the mission. He stood at attention in a large chamber, Kaiser sitting perfectly still beside him. The council was arranged in a half-circle, admirals and commanders from a dozen different species, each one staring at the human and his dog with expressions that ranged from curiosity to fear. Admiral spoke first. The admiral was an aquatic species called and they floated in a water-filled command pod that hung from the ceiling. Their voice came through speakers built into the pod's surface. "Private, you will explain the nature of your animal." Kept his voice steady. "Kaiser is a German Shepherd Admiral, a domesticated subspecies of wolf. He's trained in detection, tracking, and protection." "We have seen the footage," another council member said. "This was as similar to but much older, their crystalline body cloudy with age. That was not protection. That was combat. That was killing." "Yes, sir, Kaiser is trained for that too." "How?" Admiral leaned forward in their pod. "How does your species train an animal to fight like that? What technology do you use? What genetic modification?" Shook his head. "No technology, no modification, we just trained him. The same way humans have been training dogs for thousands of years." Silence fell over the chamber. The council members looked at each other. "Thousands of years," the old repeated. "You are saying that humans have kept these creatures for thousands of years?" "About 40,000 years, actually." Paused. "Maybe longer. We're not really sure when it started." More silence. Could see the council members trying to process this information. 40,000 years. Most of the species in the coalition hadn't even developed language 40,000 years ago. And humans had already been living with wolves, turning them into something new, becoming something new themselves. "Why?" Admiral asked finally. "Why would you do this? What purpose does it serve?" Looked down at Kaiser. The dog looked back up at him, tail starting a slow wag. Those dark eyes were full of trust, full of love, full of something that had no name in any language. "They protect us," said. "They hunt with us. They keep us warm at night and warn us when danger is coming. They're our partners, our companions." He paused. "Our family." "Family?" one of the council members said. It was a which surprised. He hadn't known there were in the coalition military. This one was older than the raiders, with scars across their scales and eyes that had seen too much war. "You call a predator your family?" "Yes." "It could kill you. It has the teeth, the claws, the instincts. Why does it not?" Thought about this. It was a question he had been asked before in different ways by different people. He had never found a good answer. There was no good answer, really. There was only the truth. "Because he loves me," said simply, "and I love him." The council chamber erupted. Several species started talking at once, arguing, questioning, demanding explanations. The concept of love between species, of loyalty that had nothing to do with programming or genetics, of a predator choosing to protect instead of hunt. It broke something in their understanding of how the universe worked. Admiral called for silence. The aquatic alien waited until the chamber was quiet, then spoke again. There is a problem, Private. Coalition law prohibits unmarked combat organisms aboard military vessels. Your animal was not registered as a combat unit. It was listed as an emotional support companion. Felt cold. Admiral, I didn't know how to classify him properly. The Coalition didn't have a category for what Kaiser is. That is not relevant. The law is clear. Unregistered combat organisms are to be confiscated, studied, and if deemed dangerous, terminated. The word hit like a physical blow. Terminated. They wanted to kill Kaiser. They wanted to take his dog, the partner who had saved his life, who had saved his squad's lives, and kill him because of a paperwork error. No, the word came out harder than intended. With respect, Admiral, no. You do not have a choice, Private. Then you'll have to go through me. The chamber went silent again. Every alien in the room was staring at the human, this soft, fragile human who had no claws, no armor, no natural weapons, who had just threatened to fight an entire military command structure for an animal. Kaiser stood up. He didn't growl. He didn't bare his teeth. He just moved closer to, pressing against his leg, watching the room with those dark, intelligent eyes. The message was clear. Where his human went, he went. Whatever his human faced, he faced too. They were pack. The silence stretched, and then unexpectedly someone spoke. I will vouch for the animal. Every head turned. Commander stepped forward from the back of the chamber. The officer's carapace was still patched in places, still healing from the battle on the jungle moon. They walked with a slight limp, but their voice was strong. The creature saved my soldiers, said. It fought when others fell. It held the line when I could not. Whatever laws it may have broken, it has earned its place on this ship. Admiral's massive eyes turned too. You are willing to take responsibility for it. For him, corrected, and yes, I am. Another long silence. Felt something loosen in his chest. He looked at the commander who had dismissed him on his first day, who had called Kaiser a beast and an inconvenience. Something had changed. The jungle moon had changed it. Admiral floated back in their pod. Very well, the council will deliberate, dismissed. 2 days later, received new orders. Kaiser had been officially registered as a military combat unit. His official rank was K-9 Specialist First Class. He was issued a service record, a military identification number, and a small metal tag to wear on his collar. Pinned the tag to Kaiser's collar that evening. The dog sat perfectly still while he did it, then licked face when he was done. You're a soldier now, buddy, said, scratching behind Kaiser's ears. Officially, how does it feel? Kaiser's tail wagged. His tongue lolled. He had no idea what any of it meant. He only knew that his human was happy, and that was enough. It was always enough. That night, Commander stopped by his quarters. They stood in the doorway, watching Kaiser sleep on his mat. I did not understand before, said quietly. I thought it was weakness, this attachment you have, this need to keep something soft and vulnerable close to you. And now, asked. His compound eyes gleamed in the low light. Now I think perhaps it is your greatest strength. You do not just fight for causes, you humans. You fight for each other, for your pack. They left without another word, lay down on his bed and listened to Kaiser's steady breathing. Outside the viewport, stars wheeled past in the endless dark. But in that small room there was warmth. There was trust. There was something older than starships, older than civilizations, older than words. There was pack. The hegemony had been watching. In the months since the jungle moon, the story of the human and his dog had spread beyond the coalition. Spies had transmitted the combat footage across enemy lines. Analysts had studied every frame. Generals had argued about what it meant and what should be done. In the end, they decided that the human and his animal were a threat, and threats needed to be eliminated. The space station appeared on Coalition sensors 3 weeks before the mission. It was old, abandoned, floating in empty space between two dead systems. Initial scans suggested it might contain valuable technology, maybe even weapons. It was exactly the kind of target that the Coalition loved to investigate. It was bait. Everyone knew it was bait, but bait could work both ways. The plan was simple, and his squad would enter the station through the main entrance. They would trigger whatever trap the hegemony had prepared, and while the enemy was focused on them, a strike team would approach from the opposite side and destroy the hegemony forces from behind. "You understand the risks," Commander said during the briefing. "You will be drawing their fire. You will be the target." Nodded, Kaiser sat beside him, ears forward, listening to everything. "We understand. The strike team will reach you in 15 cycles. You must survive until then." 15 cycles, about 20 minutes, it seemed like forever. It seemed like nothing at all. The squad entered the station through an airlock that groaned with age. The corridors beyond were dark and narrow, lit only by emergency lights that flickered red. The air smelled like rust and decay. Nothing had lived here for a long time. Kaiser's nose worked constantly, reading the scents, mapping the space in ways no technology could match. His tail was low, his ears flat. He didn't like this place. Didn't like it either. They moved deeper into the station. The corridors were too narrow for proper squad formation. They had to move in single file, weapons pointed forward and back, checking every doorway and every shadow. Then the trap sprung. The first thing noticed was the sound. A high-pitched whine, almost too high to hear, that seemed to come from everywhere at once. It didn't bother him much. It was annoying, nothing more. But Kaiser screamed. Had never heard the dog make a sound like that. It was pain and terror and confusion all mixed together, a sound that no dog should ever make. Kaiser collapsed, paws pressed against his ears, body shaking, whimpering in a way that broke's heart. "Sonic weapons," shouted. "They're targeting the dog's hearing." The attack came a second later. Hegemony soldiers poured from hidden doorways, firing weapons that filled the corridor with bright energy. The squad fell back, taking cover where they could, returning fire. But they couldn't move fast enough. The corridors were too narrow, the enemy too many. Took a hit to the shoulder and went down, was pinned behind a collapsed support beam. Even, fighting at the front of the squad, was being pushed back step by step. And Kaiser couldn't help. The dog was still on the ground, still shaking, still making those terrible sounds. The sonic weapons had been designed specifically for him. The hegemony had done their research. Made a choice. He threw himself over Kaiser's body. He covered the dog with his own flesh, his own fragile human flesh, trying to shield those sensitive ears from the sound. A hegemony energy bolt hit his back and he felt fire spread across his shoulder, but he didn't move. He couldn't move. His dog needed him. Shouted, "You need to get up, we need to move." Couldn't answer. The pain was too much and the sonic weapon was still screaming and Kaiser was still shaking beneath him. He felt blood running down his back. He felt his strength fading. But he couldn't leave his dog. Then, through the pain and the noise and the chaos, remembered something. He remembered a thunderstorm years ago back on Earth. He remembered a puppy, barely 6 months old, shaking with fear in his arms. He remembered the song he had sung to calm that puppy down, an old song his father had taught him, a song that meant safety and home and love. He started singing. His voice was weak, it cracked and wavered. But he sang anyway, the old melody rising through the noise of battle, cutting through the sonic screams. He sang about quiet places and warm fires and the end of storms. He sang about being safe. He sang about being home. Kaiser's ears moved. Through all that pain, through all that noise, he heard his human's voice. He heard the song that meant everything was okay, the song that meant Pac was here, the song that meant love. He stopped shaking. Felt it happen. He felt the tension leave Kaiser's body. He felt the dog take a deep breath, then another. And then he felt something that seemed impossible. Kaiser stood up. The sonic weapon was still screaming. The pain must have been terrible. But Kaiser looked at his human who was bleeding and hurt and still singing that old song, and something ancient woke up inside him. Something that didn't care about pain. Something that only cared about one thing. His pack was in danger. Kaiser charged. He was slower than before. He wasn't moving at his best, but he didn't need to be at his best. He needed to be brave, and that was something Kaiser had never lacked. The hegemony soldiers had not expected this. Their trap had worked perfectly. The dog had fallen. The human had fallen. The battle was almost won. And then the dog got back up. Kaiser hit the first soldier before they could react. He hit the second while they were still turning around. He wasn't killing with the same terrible efficiency as before. He was taking hits, getting hurt, bleeding from half a dozen new wounds. But he kept fighting. He kept protecting his pack. The sonic weapon finally died. Someone on the squad, maybe, had found the generator and destroyed it. The silence that followed was almost as painful as the noise had been. Tried to stand. He couldn't. His legs wouldn't work and his back felt like it was on fire. But he could see Kaiser, still fighting, still standing between the enemy and the squad. "Kaiser," he whispered. "Good boy, come here, boy." The strike team arrived 3 minutes later. They burst through the station's rear entrance and hit the hegemony forces from behind, just as planned. The battle was over in less than a minute after that. When the smoke cleared, the strike team found something they hadn't expected. They found a human soldier, barely conscious, covered in blood, lying on the floor of a narrow corridor. And they found a German shepherd standing over him, teeth bared, growling at anyone who tried to come close. Even the friendlies, even the rescuers. Kaiser wasn't letting anyone near his human until he was sure it was safe. The squad's medic, who had seen many strange things in their career, approached slowly with their hands raised. "Easy," they said. "I'm here to help. I'm going to help your human. Can you let me do that?" Kaiser's growl softened. He looked down at who managed a weak smile. "It's okay," Buddy whispered. "They're friends, they're pack." The dog's tail wagged once. He stepped aside, still watching, still alert, still ready to fight if anyone made a wrong move. The medic worked quickly, would survive. He would need time in a healing tank and weeks of recovery, but he would survive. And so would Kaiser. Later, much later, when woke up in the medical bay, he found his dog lying beside his bed. Kaiser's wounds had been treated. There were bandages on his sides and a cone around his neck that he obviously hated. But he was there. He was always there. Reached down and scratched behind Kaiser's ears. "We made it, Buddy," he said softly. "We made it." Kaiser's tail thumped against the floor. His eyes were tired but happy. His human was alive. That was all that mattered. That was always all that mattered. 6 months changed everything. The war with the hegemony had shifted. What had once been a slow, grinding conflict had turned into something faster, something more dangerous, something that the hegemony was losing. And the reason for that change had 4 legs and a wagging tail. Earth had sent more soldiers. That was expected. What no one had expected was what came with them. Dogs. Hundreds of dogs. German shepherds and Belgian, Dutch shepherds and Labrador retrievers. Some were trained for combat, some for detection, some for tracking. All of them were bonded to their handlers in ways that alien species were only beginning to understand. The hegemony learned to fear a new word, K9. The reports came in from every front. A human soldier and their dog had cleared an enemy bunker that had held off an entire platoon. A tracking dog had found a hidden hegemony base that scanners had missed for months. A combat dog had saved an entire squad by alerting them to an ambush before it could be sprung. And everywhere the same story repeated itself. When a dog was threatened, its human became something terrifying. When a human was threatened, its dog became something unstoppable. The bond between them was not a weakness. It was a weapon that the hegemony had no answer for. Recovered from his wounds. It took 2 weeks in a healing tank and another month of physical therapy, but eventually he was back on his feet. Kaiser recovered too, though he now had a thin scar across his side where a hegemony energy bolt had grazed him. Thought it made him look even more distinguished. They were offered positions in the rear, training roles, advisory positions, heroes' retirement basically. They had done enough, command said. They had earned the right to rest. They refused. Stood in the command center of the Vigilance of Stars, Kaiser at his side as always. Admiral floated in their command pod, watching him with those massive aquatic eyes. "You understand," the Admiral said, "that you have given the Coalition more than we could have asked. You have changed the war. You have saved countless lives. No one would think less of you if you chose to step back." Looked down at Kaiser. The dog was graying around the muzzle now. He wasn't as fast as he used to be, but his eyes were still sharp, and his tail still wagged, and his heart was still the same as it had always been. "He's a soldier," said. "Same as me. We don't quit while there's fighting to do." Admiral was silent for a long moment. Then they nodded, water rippling inside the pod. "Very well. But know this, Private, you and your dog will be remembered. Long after this war is over, long after both of you are gone, your names will live on. You have shown us something we did not know was possible." "What's that, Admiral?" "That the greatest weapon in the universe is not technology or strength or numbers. It is love. The love between a human and their dog. The love that makes both of you more than you could ever be alone." Smiled. It was strange, hearing those words from an aquatic alien floating in a water-filled pod on a spaceship millions of miles from Earth. But it was also right. It was the truth that humans had always known, the truth that they were finally sharing with the galaxy. Love was a weapon, loyalty was a weapon, pack was a weapon. And the hegemony had no defense against any of them. 2 weeks later, the shuttle from Earth arrived. Went down to the docking bay to meet it, same as he always did when new soldiers arrived. He remembered his own arrival, years ago now, when everyone had stared at him and his dog like they were strange creatures from a primitive world. Things were different now. The airlock opened and a young soldier stepped out. She was small, barely out of training, with nervous eyes and hands that couldn't stay still. Beside her, connected by a simple leather lead, walked a Belgian. The dog was young too, maybe a year old, with ears that were still too big for his head and a tail that wagged at everything. The alien crew members didn't stare. They didn't step back. A few of them even smiled or made whatever gesture their species used to show welcome. K-9 teams were respected now. K-9 teams were heroes. The young soldier saw approaching and snapped to attention. "Sir, Private First Class Sarah Park reporting for duty." Held up a hand. "Easy, Private, no need for all that, I'm not an officer." He knelt down and held out his hand to the dog sniffed him carefully, then licked his fingers. His tail wagged harder. "What's his name?" asked. "Duke, sir." "Good name," stood back up. Kaiser had moved forward to sniff Duke, the older dog greeting the younger with the patient tolerance of an experienced veteran. "First deployment." Sarah nodded. She was trying to hide her nerves but could see them clearly. He remembered feeling the same way. "Yes, sir. We just finished our training, they said. They said you were the first one. You and Kaiser. They said you started all of this." Looked back at Kaiser, who was now letting Duke lick his face. The old dog's tail was wagging. Despite everything he had been through, despite all the battles and wounds and close calls, he still found joy in the simple things. He still found joy in meeting a new friend. "I don't know if we started anything," said honestly. "We just did our job, we looked out for each other. That's what Pack does." "Pack," Sarah repeated. She looked down at Duke, who had stopped licking Kaiser's face and was now looking up at her with pure adoration. "They taught us about that in training, about how it's not just about following orders, it's about something deeper." "It is," put a hand on her shoulder. "You'll learn, you'll make mistakes, and you'll have hard days, and there will be times when you think you can't do it anymore. But you've got Duke, and Duke's got you. As long as you remember that, you'll be okay." Sarah smiled. It was a small smile, still nervous but real. "Thank you, sir." "Call me." They walked together through the ship's corridors, 2 humans and 2 dogs. The alien crew members stepped aside as they passed and saw something new in their eyes. Not fear, not confusion, not the old dismissal of fragile humans with their strange pets. Respect. They had earned that respect, all of them. Every human soldier, every military working dog, every K-9 team that had fought and bled and refused to quit. They had shown the galaxy what humanity was capable of, not through strength or technology, but through something older and simpler. Through love. Through loyalty. Through Pack. They reached a viewport that looked out into space. Stars wheeled past in the endless dark, cold and distant and uncaring. The universe was vast and dangerous and full of things that wanted to destroy everything humanity had built. But wasn't afraid. He reached down and scratched behind Kaiser's ears. The old dog leaned into his touch, eyes closing with pleasure, tail wagging slow and steady. Beside them, Sarah did the same with Duke, and the young dog's tail went crazy with happiness. 2 humans, 2 dogs, standing at the edge of infinity. "You'll do fine," said quietly. "Both of you, just remember out here you're not just representing humanity." He looked at Sarah, at Duke, at Kaiser. He thought about all the other K-9 teams spread across the fleet, all the humans and dogs who were fighting and protecting and loving each other across the stars. "You're representing the Pack." Sarah nodded. She understood. Maybe not completely, not yet, but she would. They all did eventually. Every human who had ever loved a dog, every dog who had ever loved a human, they all understood eventually. Pack wasn't just a word. It was a promise. It was a bond that crossed species and stars. It was the oldest alliance in human history, renewed every time a soldier looked into their dog's eyes and saw trust looking back. The viewport showed nothing but cold stars and empty space, but in that corridor there was warmth. There was love. There was loyalty that had survived 40,000 years and would survive 40,000 more. There was Pack. And as long as there was Pack, nothing in the universe could stand against them. Kaiser's tail kept wagging. Duke's tail kept wagging. And somewhere out there, among the stars, the hegemony was learning what every enemy of humanity would eventually learn. You don't just fight the human. You fight the dog too. And together they are unstoppable.